It's our Forex blog for May 9th, 2013, and this is our currency index, which basically in a nutshell shows you a graphical view of every currency. And you can scroll back and you can use this to practice trade with. You can link all the charts with the same color and hit our demo trading button on the top, and it allows you to demo trade. And this gives you a wealth of information of each currency. The dollar indexes were near the lows earlier. They weren't able to go and stay below the previous day's low. They are in a tight little rectangle pattern where low volatility happened, and when they broke out of it at 8:30, we've had very strong trends the rest of the day. These charts show you where most, or I should say all the dollar pairs, where their average price is, where most people have positions for the previous day. Underneath that, you tend to want to look for sells. Above that, you want to look for buys. You can see the euro, the average price was right here. It sold off last night and was underneath there. So everyone who bought yesterday, all the euro pairs on average was long from here. So they were losing money. And so when price goes from below to above the hourly right here and then back down, this is a pretty high probability place to get short. And when the trend is down, you could just simply look for sells at the upper Bollinger Bands. Very high probability. You can see virtually 100% success today. You basically want to use this to identify which currencies are strong and which ones are weak, and you want to buy the strong ones versus the weak. There's all kinds of different patterns that are very high probability. This one right here in the pound, it was underneath its point of control, broke out above it. It broke from below its hourly moving average in gray to above it, and so at 3 to 4:30, you want to look to buy this. You wouldn't, or you could consider buying it against the dollar. The dollar was strong at 8:30. The euro broke down a little bit closer to 5, and so you could have sold the euro pound going up to 5. Very high probability. Here's 5 o'clock. And there's a little bit of a pullback here. This one was underneath the hourly for most of the morning, or I should say after 2 a.m. It went from above the hourly to below it, came down and did a retest here. But you can see after 5 it went down, a nice little pullback, down. And when you know the trend, you could just simply wait for price to get near the upper Bollinger Band on our perfect oscillator, and then when it kind of starts to go down, you get short. It gets you in the positions, very high probability places. Let's take a look at the dollar here when it broke out at 8:30. What was one of the stronger currencies when that happened? That was be right here at 8:35. The dollar's strong, the euro's trending down, and it broke the previous day's low. So the euro's weaker after 8 than it was all day yesterday. You can see the CAD made a nice little move up. Its trend was down all day. The daily trend's down. The weekly trend, unfortunately, is up. And one of the hard parts of trading is when everyone knows to trade with a trend or focus on trading with a trend, but what trend? Right now, this thing's going up, but the trend for the day is down. The weekly trend's up. What trend do you use? Well, it depends on your time frame. If you're a longer-term trader, you might want to avoid this. You might want to wait for all the trends to line up. You can see the pound today from 4:30 to 8. It's trending up. You want to look to buy the lower bands, buy the lower bands, buy the lower bands. Obviously, this one here failed. This is the beginning of a new downtrend. No method works 100% of the time. What you want to do is focus on small losses and big wins. When trades don't work, you get out with small losses. At 8:30 right here, the dollar's going up. The CAD is likely to reverse. So you could look for a dollar CAD buy at 8:30. Let's bring that up and take a look at that. The euro's weak. Let's take a look at that as well. At 8:30, the euro dollar is likely to go down. Here's 8:30. Actually, it's right near the lower band. You're looking at the currency for a little bit of a pullback to go short. You can see this one hit the upper Bollinger Band right there, like I was mentioning before. Very high probability. If you look at the downtrend, each time that happens, this trade right here failed. Right here, you're looking for it to break the trend line, short right there. Came really close to hitting it right there. And what was the other one we want to look at? Oh yeah, the CAD, 830. Strong dollar, CAD's likely to be weak, and you can see that's exactly what happened here. The dollar was above the hourly, got a nice little pullback right there. It was right at the lower band, and it didn't go up too many pips at that time, but as far as a scalping basis, you would have been able to make money there. There's a lot of filters in our software that you can use to help your trading. The hourly moving average tends to be one of the better ones because most the people who move the Forex markets are longer term traders, and they're focusing on selling underneath the hourly and buying above it. One thing that you should be aware of is most days the upper 2.0 white containment band contains price. So when it gets above there, it's safer to actually look for a counter trend trade than to trade with the trend. You can put the point of control on your charts. FX value area, that shows you what the previous days and previous weeks point of control is. These are major areas of support resistance. And sometimes price is above the hourly, but it's below the point of control. This is where most traders have positions in the dollar CAD yesterday. And you can see that was a major resistance area here and here. Once it broke above there, this was a pretty high probability place to go long. And guess where the high of the move was? Right to last week's most actively traded price, which you can see fell 176 pips last week from the week before. So this is a counter trend move up. The dollar CAD is actually in a downtrend based on the last week. Yesterday was in a down move as well. If you wanted to earlier today, as long as it stayed underneath the point of control, focus on sells, you certainly could do that. Look for kind of up moves where it breaks out here. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. Let me show you our ray tool. Not necessarily the ray, but when you have a trend line like this, when you let go and you project it off of the outer band here, usually when the price gets to the upper quadrant, it's a pretty high probability place to sell. And you can see that one did pull back about 15 pips. Once it's outside of the band, the trend channel, you really can't use it anymore, unfortunately. But there's a lot of different ways of using our software to trade. Let's scroll forward. You can spot double tops, and in this case, triple tops. Price came up, failed, failed, failed. Usually the third time price hits that level, it explodes through it. When it doesn't, it's a tremendous move in the opposite direction. So you have a triple top here, a failure to explode up, which normally happens, followed by, because you can see that happen here in the dollar, the high, the third time through kind of went sideways and exploded up. That's what typically happens. And when you don't get an explosive move after a resistance area gets hit 3 times or a support area 3 times, you're going to have a big move the other direction. So you want to take the breakouts when it goes up to it the third time. When it fails, a lot of times you might want to just flip it immediately and write it down. You can see at 8, a little bit after 8, the pound is in a very high probability reversal phase. You can see the point of control of the pound was down 28 or so pips yesterday. So the dollar pretty much didn't change its trend yesterday, but the pound did go down. So when you have a move up in the pound and it fails to go higher, very high probability at 8:15. We have a very high probability pound dollar sell a little bit after 8. So you can see on this chart, the pound dollar hit our upper containment band. On this move right here, the perfect oscillator is at an extreme. Most times the plus 80 or minus 80 tends to contain price. Now obviously this move, when price comes down and goes sideways and gets no bounce off of it, it can go and stay underneath the lower band. And this was obviously due to a news release at 2, but most of the time the perfect oscillator is going to contain price. And you have a nice little trend line on this. This was last week's upper value area. It failed to stay above it, but you can see once it broke above it, it acted as resistance. Once resistance is broken, it tends to act as support. And it wasn't able to make a higher high. and then just busted through it. Very high probability place to get short once that trend line got hit, and you knew at 8 o'clock looking at the pound index that it was likely to pull back. You don't know how many pips you're going to catch, but a lot of times you get into trades and they just take off. And one of the things I'm working on is intelligent trailing stops that basically handle stops exactly like I do when I'm trading. Let me give you a little preview of that. I'm using these in my automated trading systems, and I have them attached to the broker that I trade with, and once the trade's on, it recognizes there's a trade and it exits the trades for me. So I pretty much spend all my time when I'm manually trading looking for entries, and I let my computer systems exit the trade for me. And that way I can, sometimes have 5 or 6 trades on at the same time with smaller positions in each one than I normally would trade, but having the diversification of multiple trades has dramatically improved my trading. Here's an example of that perfect oscillator for today. During that news announcement, you can sometimes not see it on here. The red line is where the stop is, and it has to actually close beyond it. But it is a super tight stop, and it got out of this trade right here in this bar's close. You're never going to find something that I'm not sure where I got into this trade of it. You're almost never going to find a stop that catches 75 to 85, 90% of a move. And so let me show you another example of it today. This is just a little preview. This may be months before I release it to the end user, because it's really only effective when it's hooked up to your broker. But you can see it got out of this trade right here, pretty much catching. I'm not sure where I was in this trade at. It just puts the buyer at the bottom, but you can see a pretty high percentage of the actual move the stop caught. So just a little preview of things to come, and I might release it without the execution aspects, and that way you can add it yourself to the chart. Whether it's long or short, you would enter that into the settings and then get an audio alert when it's broken. And that way you can go about your business and not watch and worry too much about the trades you have on, and focus instead on finding entries. If you take enough trades and you catch 1 or 2 big trades a day, you should be profitable most days, unless you get into a lot of chop. One thing that leads to choppy price action is when price is underneath the hourly and above the point of control the previous day, or vice versa, above the point of control, or below the point of control and above the hourly. Tends to be very choppy, and that's exactly what happened in the Australian. The weekly trend, you can see, is extremely down, and once it breaks this right here at 2 o'clock, very high probability. We know at 2 o'clock the dollar was super strong, obviously, so the Australian dollar was a wonderful one to be selling at 2 o'clock. You can see a couple things on the chart. The point of control right here of this chart, it's right here. This is where most traders have positions. So anyone who was long yesterday, or the majority of people that were long around 1.0180 or so right here. And price came down and acted as support. Here's the lower value area. The upper and lower value area is where it spent 68% of its trading activity yesterday, from the green to the red level. And when it broke down, just astronomical, huge 125 pip drop. It's just absolutely amazing. And if you want to see, well, I'll showcase that another day when I release it, but you can see just huge moves are possible when you use our currency meter or currency indexes. Let's look at it for other times of the day. The CAD, it has a nice little downtrend right here. Anytime a trend line gets hit 3 times and breaks, it's pretty high probability. So at 9 o'clock, what was strong? Or I should say, what was weak? We kind of have the exact opposite in the yen. It was never able to get above its point of control. It was in the choppy phase, above the hourly, below the point of control all day, and it was choppy. 9 o'clock, it broke down. CAD yen is an excellent one to be buying at 9 o'clock. And this is a good example of the kind of moves you can catch when you're trading in the right direction. On the chart, you can see the price was pretty much stuck between the upper value area and lower value area of the day, and at 9 o'clock it broke out. And if you missed that first move, you got a nice little pullback here, and you have a nice little 2-hour wedge pattern right here as well. Very high probability. And I very rarely like to buy breakouts up near the white band, but as long as it's not too far above the white band, you can take a smaller position trade. But you can see the extremes are for this currency, it's right at its extreme. So typically it's not going to go above the 1.618 fib of this. So this is probably pretty likely to be the max high. Let's draw that on there just to see. Okay, so it did come close to the 1.618 fib target. And if you're an aggressive trader and you want to, when you know it's up statistically too much or perfect oscillator's up too much, if you want to get short when price is in a kind of a choppy pattern up way above the upper band, it's a great place usually to pick up 15 to 30 pips. I do these counter trend trades all the time, but first focus on making money trading with the trend and then learn the counter trend methods.